welcome back to Taste Test Thursdays. This is a special bonus series of Taste of Truth Tuesdays where I get to share those passion projects, the topics that don't always make it to the main episodes but still deserve their moment in the spotlight. In today's episode, we're wiki switching gears. After some deep dives into spirituality and behind-the-scenes explorations, we're diving back into something near and dear to my heart, which is functional health. Get ready, because this one, I hope, is a game changer. We're going beyond the basics and exploring how awe, yes, that magical feeling you get when you're totally mesmerized, can be a powerhouse for your body, activating the vagus nerve and even reducing inflammation. So it's time to get grounded, calm the nervous system, and focus on the holistic wellness in ways you might not have considered before. So let's dig in. So you're doing all the right things, eating clean, working out, drinking all that water, but your energy is tanked, your sleep is wonky, and your brain feels like it's buffering. Does that sound familiar? Let's talk about your mitochondria, and you may remember that from school, the powerhouse of the cell, and how stress, nutrient depletion, and hormonal rhythms might be quietly wrecking your energy production behind the scenes. And this blog is especially for the women out there because our mitochondrial health is different. Our hormones, nervous systems, and even breathing patterns shift across our cycles, and that affects how well we convert food into fuel, handle stress, and recover from exercise. So let's start off with Stress 101, why it drains your energy and your minerals. And we have talked about this before on the podcast because stress is one of those key pillars of the 365 Easy Challenge that we do every New Year. And if you've missed that episode, you can check it out here, linked in the show notes. Let's define stress, because it's not just the I have a deadline kind, but any perceived threat to balance. That includes physical stress, illness, inflammation, psychological stress like grief or anxiety, and environmental stress like pollution or poor sleep. Even joyful events like planning a wedding or starting a new job, that counts as stress. When you're stressed, your body flips into survival mode. Number 1, cortisol and adrenaline spike, signaling your body to release glucose for quick energy. Number 2, mitochondria ramp up that ATP production to meet energy demand. And number 3, the real kicker, magnesium gets burned through like wildfire. Why? Because ATP, your cellular energy currency, has to bind with magnesium to be biologically active. No magnesium, no usable energy. Magnesium, the silent hero you're probably missing. Most women are already deficient in magnesium before stress even enters the chat. And here's why. Soil depletion has stripped magnesium from our crops. Highly processed diets are nearly magnesium free. And number 3, over-supplementing calcium without balancing magnesium throws off the mineral equilibrium because most of all, our bodies are in ratio with one another. So then we add chronic stress, hormonal fluctuations, blood sugar swings, and poor sleep, and your magnesium gets wiped out even faster. So some signs that you might be low on magnesium will be PMS symptoms, muscle cramps or tension, brain fog, fatigue that doesn't improve with rest, or anxiety or irritability. So to replenish effectively, you're going to need more than just a basic supplement. You're going to need the cofactors that help magnesium do its job, which leads me to the power trio: magnesium, B vitamins, and taurine. These 3 work in sync to fuel your mitochondria and restore balance. So let's talk about B vitamins, especially B2 and B6. These are essential for converting food into ATP, hormone metabolism, and nervous system regulation. So B2, also known as riboflavin, supports fat metabolism, while B6, as pyridoxine, even as a nutrition and dietetic major, I can't pronounce all these words. It's no big deal. So that's a coenzyme in over 100 reactions, including the creation of neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. So yeah, B6 is crucial to take during your luteal phase. It can really, really help with PMS symptoms. So let's talk about food sources, because I always prefer food over supplements. So B2, we've got beef liver, pastured eggs, and grass-fed beef and almonds. B6 will be chicken thighs, potatoes, spinach, and bananas. All right, let's talk about taurine. This is a sulfur-containing amino acid, and that's going to help shuttle magnesium into your cell wall, regulates calcium balance in the mitochondria, and they support heart, brain, and nervous system health. So food sources here can be shellfish like mussels or clams, beef liver, egg yolks, salmon, and tuna. And now let's talk about magnesium. Instead of just any magnesium, there's actually quite a bit of forms. And so we want to choose one that matches your needs. So magnesium glycinate is for sleep, stress, and anxiety. Magnesium malate for energy or sore muscles. And there's actually topical magnesiums that are in sprays, or you could use flakes for baths or lotions for folks who may be digestive sensitive. Bonus is you want to pair this with electrolytes, sodium and potassium to retain magnesium and hydrate at the cellular level. So linked in the show notes are products that I use for you guys who may be interested in checking some of that out. I use Trace Minerals, which is like an ionic magnesium dropper, and I use this pure magnesium glycinate with zinc, and I really like it. I think it's been one of the best quality magnesium supplements that I found so far. I'd love to hear what you use. Hit me up in the DMs or on Substack. I'm always open for recommendations as well. So let's talk a little bit about mitochondria and hormones and why women need a different strategy. So women's mitochondria are influenced by our monthly hormonal rhythms, like estrogen, which supports mitochondrial health, and progesterone, which fluctuates. That's what really can contribute to PMS. And even overtraining, like overexercising, can wipe out the energy reserves. Chronic stress is going to hit women differently, and it's not just about fatigue, but that's where we'll see cycle disruption. So your period will be either late, you might miss it even. I know a lot of my clients who are doing really intense, high impact boot camp workouts like Orange Theory Fitness and doing them like 5-6 times a week, and they would lose their cycle. And that is a huge red flag. Other things to look out for would be sleep issues, brain fog and anxiety, or just metabolic slowdowns, like you're unable to recover from your workout or your wounds, cuts, bruises are healing slowly. We talk about biofeedback pretty often on Instagram and my content with my clients in the past for sure, and on this podcast. And I'll link those all in the show notes if you want to go in further deep dives on past episodes. So now let's dive into some tangible, actionable tips. How to support your mitochondria without going full biohacker, because come on, let's be real, cold plunges and 18-hour or longer fast are just not it for most women. Number 1, red light therapy, which is gentle mitochondrial support. So seriously, forget the cold plunges. Red light therapy, RLT, in the research is a mitochondrial friendly tool that works with your biology, not against it. It's going to boost ATP production by stimulating cytochrome C oxidase, and it enhances collagen production for mitochondrial membranes in skin, and it supports the thyroid and HPA axis function. So best use would be morning, your face and chest for 5 to 10 minutes to boost circadian rhythm, and evening, your abdominal area or lower back to support hormones and recovery. You can also do this post-workout for muscle recovery without the cortisol spikes. And so I have linked red light therapy tools from someone I trust in her ability to discern what's good, what's not good. But I mean, we're all human, so, take that all with a grain of salt. Number 2 tip will be CO2 training and breath work, your mitochondria's oxygen hack. So women often breathe faster and more shallow, especially during stress or in the luteal phase, which are the last 2 weeks of your cycle. This blows off CO2 too quickly, reducing oxygen delivery to cells via the Bohr effect, BOHR effect. The result? Less efficient mitochondria. Womp womp. So try this. Nasal breathing during workouts to reduce oxidative stress. Breath holds. So inhale, hold for 5 to 10 seconds, slowly exhale. Humming or chanting, which activates the vagus nerve, which we'll talk about more later, and improves mitochondrial output. Number 3, strategic fasting, being cycle aware, not cortisol crazy. Long fasts can really mess with your hormones, especially progesterone. And I have had a history with this back when I was on Isogenics, that MLM company that I talked a lot about in my second season. We promoted shake days and then cleanse days, which were intermittent fasting days. So I would do 24 hours to 48 hours, of course, doing some approved snacks that were products that I sold and consumed, which were highly processed junk. In combination with all the bodybuilding competitions I did while I was doing the intermittent fasting, I am still paying the price with what I've done to my thyroid, my adrenals, my metabolism. And so that's why I wanted to give these tips. So instead of 16-hour plus fast, try 12 to 14-hour overnight fast, which I think are the most supportive for women. You are still fasting. You're still getting the benefits. It's just not as extreme. I think it is also very important to eat within 60 to 90 minutes of waking, especially if you're stressed or fatigued. And a lot of my clients have issues eating first thing in the morning. They say they're not hungry, which I think is not a good sign, but I typically suggest drinking something, like whether that will be, I do a kefir drink with a little bit of orange juice, a lot of kefir with some collagen, maybe some creatine, and a splash of maple syrup with that liquid magnesium. Other clients can do protein shakes, bone broth, like something in your system, especially if you're stressed out or fatigued. You have to be eating something. And if you're doing coffee on an empty stomach and then want to talk about being stressed out, you know what I mean, Jelly Bean? You're running on fake fuel and you're just pouring like gasoline onto the fire if you are not eating something while you're stressed out and fatigued and then doing a bunch of caffeine. I'm saying this with love because I've done that to myself and it's not ideal. And the last thing I want to say is carb cycling. So if you do want to play around with lower carb diets, I don't want to be like a diet zealot here. Carb cycling is something you can look into, maybe playing around with doing more carbs during your luteal phase, fewer during your follicular phase. People play around with all different types of windows. I personally tried this and I cannot do low carb days. And even just like medium carb days were really hard for me. So it's just not for everybody, and it's not a moral failure if you cannot successfully do low carb. And so some of the other suggestions that I have in the blog here linked to go along with this podcast are like, mitochondria friendly, fast mimicking foods. Like I mentioned, bone broth and electrolytes, doing the shilajit resin. I have just like this black earth trace minerals that's really rich in fulvic and humic acid. And then you can also use a special type of cinnamon or berbeine. And I should actually link the brand it's Thorn. Thorn's a pretty good brand for berbeine. I think I might be saying that incorrect, for blood sugar support. But honestly, supplements are not something you just want to play around with. They can be as powerful as a prescription medicine. So just be careful. And, this is not medical advice. I do not know you. I haven't looked at your blood labs. So please make sure that you work with a professional before doing anything like this. Number 4, cycle-synced movement. Energy in, not burnout out. So overtraining is a fast track to mitochondrial burnout. Instead, match your workouts to your hormone rhythm. So this might be too dogmatic for some, and I also agree with others that think this is ridiculous. I get it. But I'm just throwing it out there for people who haven't heard of cycle syncing, want to look into it or try it out for yourselves. Because I honestly think that if you are like missing your cycle and you are working towards balancing your hormones, you might want to dial into some of this. But if you are an athlete and you're training really hard or you're on birth control, you might not need to pay any attention to this. It definitely is important to focus on your own bio-individuality and just, take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, like I just said a second ago. So follicular days are the first 1 through 14 days of your cycle. So these are my favorite days of my cycle. I have the least amount of PMS or issues. So I have no problem getting my solid workouts in, strength training, cardio, whatever. It feels pretty good. Also really good to get errands done. I feel a lot of creativity. Your estrogen here will support recovery. And ovulation is going to be a peak of energy. So this is when you can do high intensity training, power moves, heavier lifts. Now, not everybody has a good ovulation. This is where some people might have pain. They might have issues with inflammation. And so again, bio-individuality, please. Luteal, which is going to be your PMS week, womp womp, my least favorite week. So yoga, Pilates, walking, zone 2 cardio, just trying to make sure that you're stimulating a lower stress response. And then your menstrual week, which is when you're on your period. This is really varying. You can do some low intensity strength training if that's tolerated, or just focus on deep rest, stretching. But most importantly, this is your mitochondrial repair time. So just check in with how your body's feeling at each cycle and do what feels best for you. All right, what's most important here is number 5, mineral hydration. Fuel your cells, not just your bladder, because plain water is not hydration. Your mitochondria thrive on structured, mineral-rich water. So structured water is still a debated topic, a little bit woo-woo, but there is more and more research coming out. So I want you to think about all of this as water with a purpose. You could try these upgrades, like coconut water with a pinch of salt, which is a natural electrolyte mix, chia seeds, aloe, bone broth. Any of these things can be sources of gel water or hydrogen-rich water to reduce oxidative stress. And so Kangen water is a huge MLM push, and I know that's hydrogen water, and I've pushed back on it being pseudoscience. And so I want to just make that clear that I'm aware of a slight contradiction here. I am not a fan of anyone who wants to sell water filters that cost $5,000, $10,000 as part of an MLM scheme. So I'm still absolutely against that. I think that you could get hydrogen-rich water from sources that aren't an MLM company. So with that, let's move into 6, nervous system regulation. So mitochondrial, they listen to your mood. Your energy is not just about macros or the movement you're doing. It's actually about your body's sense of safety. And we've explored a lot of this in a previous episode that I've linked in the show notes, and it's worth repeating. Your body won't use energy to thrive if it thinks that you're in danger. So when your nervous system is dysregulated, whether that's through prolonged stress, we call that complex PTS. Let's remove the D because there's nothing disordered about responding to prolonged stress in the way we do. Unresolved trauma, or even constant people-pleasing, known as fawning, this will cause mitochondrial downshift. The mitochondria will stop optimizing for vitality and instead prioritize survival. Your body basically is like, why should I burn through precious resources on digestion, hormone production, or even feeling creative when it feels like I'm dodging threats? Enter the vagus nerve. This is your main line communication between your brain and your body. It is the star of your parasympathetic nervous system, your rest and digest mode. It plays a central role in regulating inflammation, heart rate variability, digestion, and emotional balance. A well-toned vagus nerve sends a clear signal, you're safe now. And that signal, it gives your mitochondria permission to do what they do best, produce energy. When the vagus nerve isn't toned or isn't responsive, your body stays in a loop of hypervigilance and energy conservation. Chronic fatigue, poor digestion, and hormonal dysregulation often follow. So, how do we activate and support the vagus nerve? So gentle tools to signal safety would be somatic shaking, qigong, or just some form of intuitive movement will help release stored tension and reset the nervous system. Weighted blankets, that can be a great way to apply deep pressure that signals grounding and calm. Also just having my animals, like I literally, when I sit down every morning, I'll have 2 to 3 poodles and my cat on my lap. And that is definitely like a big weighted blanket. Humming, gargling, or laughter, this stimulates vagal tone through the throat and vocal cords. And let's talk about cold exposure, because I'm not talking about doing a cold plunge, but just a splash of cold water on your face can actually kickstart vagal activity. And last, slow, deep breathing, especially exhalation-focused breath work, sends a safety signal straight to your brainstem. The power of awe, how simple movements activate my vagus nerve and calm my system. So I'll admit, traditional meditation has never quite worked for me. Sitting still and focusing on my breath feels forced, especially with my buzzing mind. But I've learned relaxation doesn't have to come from structured sessions. Simple, spontaneous movements can activate my vagus nerve and help regulate my nervous system. One of my favorite ways to ground myself is simply spending time in the garden. The sights, sounds, and smells of nature instantly shift my state, especially when I feel a sense of awe, whether it's a blooming flower or just simply listening to the songs of the birds. And yes, that's my actual backyard. So I have some photos in the blog that goes along with the episode. My 3 poodles, Butternut, Hazelnut, and Cashew, also help so much. Their joyful energy creates a calming presence, as does my cat Filbert, whose soft purring brings deep comfort. So whether it's connecting with my pets, walking through nature, or even humming while doing the dishes, these small moments naturally regulate my nervous system without effort. The vagus nerve is like the body's superhighway for calming the nervous system, and when we experience the feeling of awe, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and this is a branch of our nervous system that promotes a sense of safety and calm. One study, which is linked in the show notes, found the experience of awe, like gazing at nature or being in the presence of something magnificent, can actually reduce levels of inflammatory cytokines. Chronic inflammation is often linked to stress, so by tapping into awe, we can indirectly manage the negative impact that stress has on our bodies. These aren't just woo-woo tricks. I think they're practical ways to remind your body that you're safe, present, and no longer in the environment that once overwhelmed you. Because when your nervous system feels safe, your energy isn't rationed, it's released. Final thoughts. Gentle power is still power. So mitochondria are more than ATP factories. They are sensitive, adaptive, and intimately linked with your hormones, emotions, and lifestyle. You don't need harsh hacks. You need magnesium, taurine, B vitamins, rest, rhythm, and nourishment. So your action steps, the too long didn't read. Eat nutrient-dense, mitochondria-supportive foods. Hydrate with intention. Sync movement with your hormonal cycle. Choose red light over cold plunges. Breathe slower, not harder. Protect your nervous system like it's sacred, because it is. Let's redefine resilient, not pushing harder, but as listening better. That's all I have for you today, folks. Thanks again for spending some time with me, and I'm not sure how many more episodes I will have in Taste Test Thursday. This might be the last one. If you have any questions or topic requests, holler at your girl. Until next time, maintain your curiosity, embrace skepticism, and keep tuning in.